The Select Committee statement on behalf of the Defence Committee. Mr Singh Dhesi will speak for up to 10 minutes, during which no interventions may be taken. At the conclusion of his statement, I will call members to ask questions on the subject of the statement. These should be brief questions and not full speeches. Can I emphasise that questions should be directed to the Select Committee Chair and not to the relevant Government Minister? But of course, frontbenchers may take part in questioning, and I'm planning on finishing this Select Committee statement after 20 minutes. I call Mr Singh Dhesi.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is indeed an honour to present the Defence Committee's first report of this Parliament on service accommodation. As we approach Christmas, I think we would all hope that the brave service people who put their lives on the line for our country would all have decent housing where they could celebrate in the warmth without fear that their living conditions would put their health or their family's health at risk. Yet this is not always true, as our report and other reports have found. What's more, there is not yet a robust funded plan to put the situation right. Before I say more about the committee's findings, I want to put on record my immense gratitude to my fellow committee members in reaching strong recommendations on a cross-party basis. I would also like to thank members of the Defence Committee in the last Parliament, including the Shadow Defence Minister, who took the evidence that informed this hard-hitting report. In particular, Robert Courts, the former member for Witney, who originally proposed and led the inquiry, and I'd like to put on record my gratitude to the House of Commons staff whose hard work made the inquiry possible, especially Sarah Williams, who managed the inquiry with curiosity and care from conception to report. Our armed forces personnel, Madam Deputy Speaker, dedicate their lives to protecting this nation, often at great personal sacrifice, ensuring that they have access to safe, comfortable and well-maintained accommodation is not just a matter of duty, it is a moral obligation. The committee's investigation has revealed a deeply concerning situation that has developed over many years. The condition of both service family accommodation and single family accommodation falls far below the standard our service men and women deserve. We have found instances of dilapidated housing, inadequate maintenance and unacceptable living conditions, including some truly appalling persistent problems with damp and mould, cases of total loss of heating, hot water and cooking facilities for months in winter, flooding and rodent infestations. These substandard living conditions directly affect the morale and operational readiness of our armed forces. They are also a significant challenge to recruitment and retention. Madam Deputy Speaker, our report highlights systemic failures in the management and maintenance of service accommodation. The current system is plagued by a lack of clear accountability and has reached a point of crisis following insufficient funding over decades. Satisfaction with service accommodation is very, very low. This is hardly surprising given that a third of single living accommodation and 2/3 of service families' accommodation are in such poor condition that they are essentially no longer fit for purpose. The committee has put forward several key recommendations to address this situation. We call for there to be a detailed funded investment plans for service accommodation. This is crucial to address the backlog of repairs and to bring the housing stock up to acceptable modern standards. It is also crucial to enable effective planning for how best to manage the interim situation in which so much defence housing remains substandard. For all accommodation which is maintained under contract, we call for the Ministry of Defence to review the assurance processes and performance measures for these contracts as part of a plan to improve the management of accommodation. There needs to be much more of a focus on the satisfaction of service people and their families. This must include making sure that the complaints processes are accessible and fit for purpose. Better communication with service people and their families is absolutely key, alongside better delivery of real improvements that people value. Madam Deputy Speaker, the committee also examined recent developments relating to the allocation of family accommodation, namely the botched, mismanaged nature of it. Both the proposed changes and the subsequent pause in their implementation have caused significant uncertainty for service personnel and their families. This situation underscores the need for clear, consistent communication and highlights the importance of thorough consultation with those affected by such changes. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to emphasise that this is not about apportioning blame, but about recognising a shared responsibility across governments over many years to do better for those who serve our country. However, it is now for the current government to put things right. The challenges are considerable and require a meaningful plan of investment and effective delivery and communication. I want to warmly welcome the announcement on Tuesday that the government is buying back the service family accommodation portfolio. The decision back in 1996 to sell the portfolio was indeed a major mistake, compounded by the terms of the deal, which has been described by the Public Accounts Committee as disastrous, leaving the public purse billions of pounds worse off, and the government becoming responsible for maintaining and upgrading an estate, and the government which was in effect owned by somebody else. So that is why this situation was a nettle that needed to be grasped. Buying back the portfolio is a right decision and has the potential to be a real game changer. However essential that this is, the buyback will not in itself directly improve things for service people and their families right now. Along with my colleagues on the Defence Committee, I will be looking closely at the plan that follows and how it is funded and delivered. Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this report to the House.
Minister Luke Pollard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I put on record the support of this government for the report that the honourable gentleman has just published? The state of military housing is not good enough. Too many of our military families are living in poor quality accommodation, and that is precisely why this government seeks to renew the contract between the nation and those who serve, and that's why we're bringing Antin homes back into public ownership. Madam Deputy Speaker, that will save the taxpayer £600,000 a day. That is money that could be used for better support for our service families, and I'm grateful for members on both sides of the House, including the Shadow Defence Secretary, for his work in support of this deal as well. So does my honourable friend agree with me that this decisive break from a failed past is just the first chance that we have to renew the contract between the nation and those who serve, and that I hope he will keep the government honest to our commitments to improve service, life and accommodation, and through the work that we're legislating for with the Armed Forces Commissioner, I hope his committee will be able to support an ongoing scrutiny of service family accommodation, because decent housing is the least that all our armed forces and their families deserve, and it's something this government is intent to deliver.
I welcome the Minister's comments, and indeed we will be supporting and scrutinising the work of government and look forward to working with the Armed Forces Commissioner as and when they're appointed. As I intimated earlier, Tuesday's announcement is very welcome, but there is a great deal of work for the Minister and his colleagues to do, and the proof, indeed, will be in the planning and the delivery.
James MacCleary.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Democrats fully support the findings of this report, and we hope it will mark the beginning of a much better, fairer deal for armed forces personnel. For too long they have been failed by successive governments. I wonder if the chair of the committee would agree with me that this is a long overdue change, one that is welcomed by our party and across the House, but at the very least our service personnel who are at times putting their lives on the line for this country, at the very least they should expect a warm, safe and secure place to call home, and that the backlogs in repairs and the basic services that you have highlighted, that the Chair has highlighted during this debate, are unacceptable and shouldn't be allowed to reoccur in future.
I thank the spokesman for the Liberal Democrats, and I couldn't agree with him more. It is completely unacceptable that we expect our brave servicemen and women and their families to be housed in such substandard conditions. The instances of damp, of mould, of rat infestation, and I could rattle off so many other things that are completely unacceptable. So I completely concur with him, and I look forward to the government taking immediate, urgent action to remediate things.
Calvin Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome this report, and I'm very proud to be part of my right honourable friend's team who have so well encapsulated the witness testimonies and the work that was done by the previous committee last time. I join him in warmly welcoming the work or the announcement from earlier in the week, and the work that will be forthcoming to bring about a service commissioner to oversee the process and to ensure that these injustices don't befall our service personnel in the future. Would he join with me in agreeing that service housing is the foundation upon which our service personnel serve and commit to our country, and that this is the start of a journey of repairing a very, very damaged contract that this country has with its service personnel?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I concur fully with my fellow member of the Defence Committee, the Honourable Member for Leyton and Wanstead, and indeed his contribution, given his vast experience of having served within our armed forces and as a member of the committee, will be substantial. And I know that he will bring that experience to bear as we look forward to remediating things. And indeed, he's correct that service accommodation is the foundation on which we must ensure that our service people have the very best possible facilities that we as a nation can offer them.
Shadow Minister Mark Francois.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For the record, I declare an interest in that I did participate in the inquiry while serving on the committee in the previous Parliament, and I thank the committee chairman for kindly pointing that out. Also, for the record, on the Annington decision, which we welcome, partly because we had done a lot of work on that prior to the election. So I thank the Minister for playing fair on that. Could I say to the chairman of the committee, now that hopefully we've resolved the issue of the ownership of the estate, there's still the question of the management of the estate. Changing the ownership doesn't fix the boiler, as it were. So would the chairman of the committee be pleased to hear that in the same bipartisan spirit that we're very happy to work with the department and government ministers to see if we can provide proposals for improving the management of the estate now that hopefully we've resolved the ownership question?
And indeed, he is right, not only in his considerable contribution to the deliberations with regards to the service accommodation report, but also in preceding years that he has served in such a distinguished manner on the Defence Committee, which, by the way, Madam Deputy Speaker, works on a cross-party basis, and this report was agreed unanimously. And he's also right to highlight that the management of the contracts now will be essential, because the committee's report has identified the serious problems, and now the ball is in the government's court as to how it manages. But it's great to see the cross-party working, and I hope that that will help to address the issues in a more timely manner.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the committee's service accommodation report and the recommendations, but I am not surprised at its findings. I also welcome, Minister, this government's move to purchase back housing stock that should have been sold off, and the hundreds of houses that will bring back to Portsmouth. However, the issue of MOD housing is huge because of the years of managed decline from the previous government. There's been no real investment, just sticking plasters. Portsmouth in particular, Madam Deputy Speaker, has been underfunded, and naval properties miss out more than most because naval personnel can be in their homes for longer than other services due to being port-based. There's a cap on void works, meaning if a family moves out, the house needs renovating and it will be withdrawn. This causes undue stress to families that have already sorted schools, sorted removals and left jobs. There isn't always a guarantee. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is so much to say on behalf of Portsmouth service personnel, but to lift the words from the page of this report, I would like to invite the committee, the ministers, to meet with me, the contractors and service personnel in Portsmouth to see the reality.
I thank my honourable friend from Portsmouth, and she is 100% right. She's also speaking with considerable experience because of the importance of Portsmouth to our nation's defence and just the sheer scale of service accommodation that is there. And indeed, I look forward to visiting Portsmouth. The Defence Committee, with assistance from the committee staff, will be visiting Portsmouth very, very soon. And yes, every instance of substandard accommodation is unacceptable, and we must all collectively work to rectify matters.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Some 40 years ago, I was growing up in army accommodation because my dad was serving in the Royal Signals. And even then, I can remember my parents talking about the problems they were having with the accommodation that they were in with their quarters. It's extraordinary that all this time later, things have probably got worse, if not rather than better. I would like to just put on the record that it's not only about the service personnel, it's also about their spouses and their children who are also living in this accommodation. And when service personnel are serving away from home for often months at a time, the impact on the family's health and their mental health, is really impacted by the quality of the accommodation that they have. Does the Chair agree with me that the impact on mental health is really important?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with my honourable friend, and she has hit the nub of the issue. If our brave servicemen and women, as they are serving around the world, if they are anxious about what is going on with their families, that affects their mental health. It also affects the mental health of the families themselves, the partners, the children, and that is why it is extremely important that we rectify matters, because otherwise our service personnel will vote with their feet and they will just walk away.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I wholeheartedly support my honourable friend's work and the work of the Select Committee. This is an excellent report and I wholeheartedly support it, as I said. May I also ask the Chairman and the committee to look at the issue of housing for veterans, which is also a very important matter. We have many, many veterans living in Reading in poor quality rented accommodation, and that is despite Reading Borough Council prioritising their needs in the council house waiting list. There simply aren't enough council houses to go round. We have a specific problem indeed, in addition to the bulk of veterans, where we have particular problems with our Nepalese or rather British Gurkha community, who are particularly struggling in poor quality accommodation. Would the Select Committee perhaps look into this matter?
I thank my honourable friend from Reading, and indeed he has been a champion for the cause of veterans, in particular Gurkha veterans. I know he recently visited Aldershot and many other places to champion the cause for them, including in Westminster Hall. He is right that veterans' issues need to be resolved, and I think that he, along with his constituents, would have been very happy with the government's recent announcement of homes for veterans, but we must keep pushing to ensure the very best possible outcome for our veterans.
Alex Serble.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me just start by wishing you a Merry Yorkshire Christmas. I'd like to thank my honourable friend for the committee's report. As we're admitting things, I also, for a brief period, lived in armed services accommodation as a child in the 1980s, and it's important for us to remember how many children live in armed service accommodation. I've been raising this issue since 2018. Starting the Carillion AME contract. Catterick Garrison in Yorkshire has one of the largest stocks of armed forces housing, and I know that my honourable friend knows how poor a lot of that maintenance work has been done, and as he mentioned, mould, rats and conditions which are unfit for children or in fact anybody to live in. Does he think that service personnel, service families who lived in the most egregious examples of poor maintenance should be subject to compensation from those private companies.
I thank my honourable friend, the member for Leeds Central, and indeed he, along with other honourable members, speak with a great deal of experience, having actually lived within service accommodation themselves. And when I had the honour recently to visit Catterick, I was able to see some of the service accommodation for myself. And yes, we do need to make sure that people are held to account, and it is up to those management contracts, and no doubt the government will put pressure on those management companies to ensure that compensation commensurate with what they have suffered is something that should very much be forthcoming.
And that concludes the Select Committee statement.